And you can bet the president will be touting the unemployment numbers as he hits the campaign trail. Last month, the United States unemployment rate fell to its lowest point in half a century. And since the last recession, the unemployment rate has dropped steadily. April's jobs report from the Bureau of Labor Statistics marked it at 3.6%, bringing the country into what economists call full employment. But the question is, are Americans feeling the benefit from all of this? Joining me now with more is NPR's chief economics correspondent, Scott Horsley. His team has actually been looking at the effects of this date on full employment and how it's affecting businesses and workers across this country. So, Scott, first off, I want to ask you, do we know what's contributing to these unemployment numbers being so low?
Well, we've seen month after month, the U.S. economy has been adding hundreds of thousands of jobs, more than 250,000 last month. We've been on a tear, really uninterrupted, since the end of the recession. And what we wanted to explore in our series on NPR all this week is whether that really means workers are finding new bargaining power to demand higher wages, better benefits, and how employers are coping when unemployment is that low and they're having trouble finding workers.
So I've got to ask you, is there more bargaining power for these workers now in this type of climate?
There definitely is. We had a story from Wisconsin where the Kohler Company, back during the recession in 2010, had imposed a two-tiered wage scale on their workforce. So workers hired after 2010 were sort of stuck at lower wages and lower benefits. That had created some friction on the factory floor. And they had a strike in 2015 where they were able to narrow the gap. And then late last year, the workers were able to bargain for a new 5-year contract that basically phases out that two-tiered wage scale and brings the newer workers up to close to the benefits and wages that their more long-term colleagues have. So it's definitely the case that if you have a job, if you're looking for a job, this is a good time to be trying to flex your muscle a little bit and say, hey, I probably deserve a little bit more pay.
You know, last summer, Gallup estimated that 36% of U.S. workers are in what's called the gig economy. They're working for companies like Uber and Lyft. Do those folks count when you look at the unemployment rate? And how do conditions compare to some of the more traditional employment jobs?
Well, one of the challenges in the gig economy, of course, is they often don't have benefits. They don't have the same kind of security that you might have if you were working for an employer. And a big question is whether that gig economy is going to be a permanent change and how big a share of the economy it's going to represent. You know, a lot of the people in the gig economy are younger workers, but we have a story in our series also about sort of older women, you know, maybe stay-at-home moms who are earning some extra money during the day working in the gig economy. It's certainly an interesting chunk of the economy, and it's changing the relationship between workers and the workplace in a lot of interesting ways.
It certainly is changing the game. And also, when you look at employment across this country, some of the larger cities have been bigger hubs. Are you seeing people relocating to other parts of the country?
There has been some movement. We have a story out of Charlotte, North Carolina in our series where, in particular, African-American workers have been moving there to take advantage of new opportunities and the lower cost of living. It's kind of a reversal of the great migration we saw in the 20th century. Now you're seeing workers moving from the north to the south, cities like Charlotte, North Carolina, Atlanta, Tallahassee, to pursue opportunities. At the same time, though, we have a couple of stories in our series that are in the upper Midwest, places like Ames, Iowa, which has the lowest unemployment rate in the country, just 1.5%. Lots of jobs there, lots of employers looking for workers, and there just are not a lot of people moving to Iowa and into cities like Ames. And so it's a real challenge for employers in those places.
You know, the president's reelection team, they want to make the economy a huge part of their 2020 platform. But based on what you see, you know, can Democrats compete with that message if the president's got these really low unemployment numbers?
Sure. Democrats will try to frame this as the continuation of the Obama economy. And in fact, if you sort of just draw a straight line back to the recession and the recovery, there is no clear inflection point in 2016 or 2017 when Donald Trump came into office. We're pretty much on a steady path that we've been on since the recovery began under the previous president. That said, no question, Donald Trump will be campaigning on a strong economy, on low unemployment, and wages that are finally starting to grow at a pace faster than inflation.
Boy, this was such a fascinating look. I want to thank you very much. NPR chief economics correspondent Scott Horsley. Scott, thank you for joining us.
Rena, good to be with you.